my son's funeral, the doctor pulled me aside and said, "Your husband paid me $50,000 to let him die." Dr. Kellerman waited until most of the mourners had left before approaching me at the cemetery. I was still standing by 8-year-old Tommy's grave, clutching the program from his service, when he touched my arm gently. "Mrs. Rodriguez, I need to speak with you privately. It's about your son's treatment." His voice was shaking, and I could see guilt written across his face. I followed him to a quiet corner near the parking lot, assuming he wanted to offer more condolences or explain something medical I hadn't understood. Instead, he looked around nervously before speaking. "What I'm about to tell you could destroy my career, but I can't live with this secret anymore." My stomach dropped. Tommy had been fighting leukemia for 2 years before losing the battle last week. "Your husband came to me 3 months ago with an offer," Dr. Kellerman said quietly. "He said Tommy was suffering too much, that the treatments weren't working, and he wanted it to end. He offered me $50,000 to stop the chemotherapy and let nature take its course." I stared at him in shock. Michael had been Tommy's biggest advocate, pushing for every possible treatment, never giving up hope. "That's impossible," I whispered. "Michael would never do that. He loved Tommy more than anything." But Dr. Kellerman was already pulling out his phone, showing me text messages and bank transfer records. There it was in black and white, payments from Michael's business account to Dr. Kellerman's personal account, dated exactly 3 months ago when Tommy's treatment had suddenly changed. Dr. Kellerman explained that Michael had convinced him it was mercy, that I was in denial about Tommy's prognosis and prolonging unnecessary suffering. He said you couldn't handle making the difficult decision, so he had to do it for the family. He made me believe I was helping end your son's pain. My legs gave out and I had to lean against a headstone to stay upright. I thought back to 3 months ago, when Dr. Kellerman had suddenly recommended switching Tommy to comfort care instead of the aggressive treatment we'd been pursuing. He'd said the cancer wasn't responding and we should focus on quality of life rather than quantity. Michael had supported the decision, saying he trusted the doctor's expertise. I'd been the one fighting to continue treatment. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked through tears. Dr. Kellerman's voice broke as he explained that watching me speak at Tommy's funeral about never giving up hope had destroyed him. "You talked about fighting until the very end, about Tommy being a warrior, but we didn't fight. I took money to stop fighting." He said he'd been planning to return the money to Michael, but couldn't live with the deception anymore. I confronted Michael that night after the funeral reception. When I showed him the evidence Dr. Kellerman had given me, his face went white. At first he denied everything, claiming the doctor was lying, trying to cover up malpractice. But when I showed him the bank records from his own account, he finally broke down. "Tommy was dying anyway," he sobbed. "The treatments weren't working. They were just making him sicker." Michael tried to justify what he'd done, saying he couldn't watch our son suffer anymore while I insisted on more and more painful procedures. "You weren't being realistic about his condition. Someone had to make the hard choice." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He'd made the decision to kill our son without even discussing it with me, his mother. The betrayal cut deeper than Tommy's death. While I'd been holding our son's hand through chemotherapy sessions, believing we were fighting together, Michael had already arranged for the fight to end. Every time I'd asked why the treatment plan changed, why we weren't being more aggressive, he'd looked me in the eyes and lied. He'd let me blame myself for not pushing harder. I called the police the next morning. Dr. Kellerman had already contacted medical licensing boards and law enforcement, cooperating fully with the investigation. The scandal made national news. A father paying a doctor to essentially euthanize his child without the mother's knowledge or consent. Both men were arrested within a week. The trial was a nightmare. Michael's defense argued that Tommy was terminal anyway, and that he was acting out of compassion to end suffering. But the prosecution showed that Tommy's latest scans had actually shown some improvement, and other oncologists testified that children with similar cases had survived with continued treatment. The jury convicted both men of conspiracy to commit murder. Dr. Kellerman got 12 years after cooperating with prosecutors and showing genuine remorse. Michael got 25 to life. During his sentencing, he finally apologized, but it was too late. He'd stolen not just Tommy's life, but also my final months of hope and my chance to make informed decisions about my own son's care. I moved across the country after the trial, unable to stay in the place where everyone knew our story. Some people blamed me for not seeing the signs, for being naive enough to trust my husband and my son's doctor. But how do you prepare for the 2 men you trusted most to conspire against your child? Tommy deserved parents who would fight for him until the very end, not a father who gave up and paid someone to help him quit. The worst part is knowing that Tommy might still be alive if I'd known the truth 3 months earlier. While I was grieving my son's death, I was also grieving the betrayal of discovering that his father had orchestrated that death. Some people can't be saved from cancer, but my son could have been saved from the people who were supposed to protect him most.